Hello, my friends. Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa String Works Nope, not the workshop. I was in the workshop on Friday with Cash's guitar. But this is the man cave. Happy Thanks. Nope, it's not Thanksgiving. Oh, I gotta quit. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Oh my God. Well, wait till I tell you everything that's gone wrong and you'll understand. I am in a tizzy here. I was working. The first thing I need to let you know is we're actually live on Wi-Fi, which is not good. I don't know what happened. I would assume that my routers that got struck by lightning finally gave up the ghost. And I'll have to finagle things around and see if I can get the actual Ethernet connection, the wired connection, to work again. It's much faster via wire than it is via Ethernet. I mean, via Wi-Fi. Oh my gosh, I can't even talk. I'm telling you, it was literally down to the wire again because of that. I had several videos to get ready for you for this morning, and I had plenty of time. Then I realized nothing was working. And I had to scramble and finally gave up on trying to get the wired connection to work because it wouldn't work. But so the Wi-Fi is working, and that's how we're doing this. So you'll probably see some delays and some problems, or you could potentially. It says that the speed is around 45 megabits, so that's considerably lower, but it's still pretty fast, actually. Well, oh my gosh, I am so flustered. It's just like you can't make this stuff up that goes wrong. It always seems to go wrong just before we go live too. Well, let me give you a storm update. I'm sure many of you probably suffered way worse in the storm than we did. We actually got by very easy on the storm. We had one sheet of tin blow off of the big old barn. And I fixed that on Friday before the main storm hit. That was, high winds, and I had to get literally while I was working on Cash's guitar, fixing that, and you probably saw the video that I released on that, is why I'm referring to it. Well, anyway, right in the middle of working on his guitar, Sue comes in and says, "You got to go fix the barn roof, So I ran out there, and one giant sheet of tin was laying out in the field. So I went out and got that and crawled up on the barn roof and nailed it back on. And in 30 and 40 mile an hour winds. And you know how steep a barn roof is. So it was not easy, but I got it done. And I nailed down all the rest of the loose tin on that barn. And we didn't suffer any further damage beyond that. That was it. We didn't even have any trees down or anything. So, at least that I've found. So we really got by very well. Unfortunately, Rolla, not so much. It got nailed. Rolla, I would say there's at least a good dozen businesses that just got wiped out. And quite a few other buildings that lost their roofs and things. And when I say wiped out, I mean like there was nothing left. There may be 2 walls or 3 walls are still standing, but the rest of it is just stirred up, just messed up. Several small businesses were done that way. And then there was a few other larger businesses. I don't know, JCPenney's building, I think some of the roof came off, and some of these other large buildings, maybe even Harbor Freight building. I know right next to them, they lost their roof. Forget now, it's a hobby craft store. Hobby Lobby, I think, lost part of their roof, and they're attached to Harbor Freight, which is my favorite store. So I hope... So anyway, I hope they're okay. I didn't go into town and look. Bill, the guitar player that's in the band, his neighborhood got hit really hard. Ron McClanahan lives in Rolla, and I sent him a text, and I have not heard a reply from him. So in fact, I'm going to look real quick. No, he's still not replied. So I don't know if he got hit or not, but there were other people, that I know that were affected, but I don't think anybody had anything terribly serious. But there were a number of houses that were just taken all the way down, and just, or at least the roofs came completely off. So it was pretty bad. It was really pretty bad. We just got very, very lucky here and really didn't have any problem at all. So that's great. But I hope you all didn't suffer anything, and just hoping that everybody made it through. I know nationwide it looked like 40-some people were killed. Golly, it's crazy, isn't it? It's just crazy. Itchy Boots, in another word, she had she had her troubles over the weekend too. She bent the foot peg on her motorcycle when it fell over, and not a single person came to her rescue, and no one offered her any hot cinnamon buns like the last time. So I bet you she really felt all alone this time. She had to fix it herself and drive back into town, and then she had trouble finding a motel. But anyway, that was like the first time I'd seen it where she's had a real problem and nobody came to her rescue. I've already mentioned that Friday afternoon I worked on Cash's guitar and got that back up in good shape. I don't really read the comments much on videos anymore, but the only comment I saw on that one was 400 grit is not fine enough to, do those frets. Well, those kinds of comments come from one of two people. Either the elitist snobs who think they know everything and, they got to have it that those frets polished like a mirror. But in a blind test, whether you believe it or not, in a blind test where if you were wearing a mask and playing the guitar, you wouldn't be able to tell if those frets were polished or if they were sanded with 400. I guarantee it. Guarantee you would not be able to tell. So, it's either from an elitist like that who thinks it's got to be polished to a mirror, or it's from somebody who's never, ever in their life done anything, sanded any metal at all. I'm telling you right, if you sand metal with 400 grit, it's slicker than snot on a doorknob. You can't feel nothing in it. So anyway, I'll let it stand as is. 400 is plenty fine enough to do a normal fret job. Sure, you can go to 600 or 800 or 1,000 if you want to, and there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want to do. I got no problem with that. In fact, it's nice to have them pretty and shiny and make them look like a mirror, but it doesn't make them play any better, and you can't feel any difference at all. Okay, so anyway, in the middle of that, I had to stop and go nail tin on, as I told you. Then later that evening, we were supposed to go to a jam over in Rolla, and I elected to stay home, and that might have been a real good decision because you never know what you might have got into. But the jam itself wasn't really affected much. There was only a few people that showed up for the jam. I think there was only 3, and Smiley Face Fiddle Girl was one of them. So Gina Huizinga was there, and there was another fellow that you all haven't met yet that was there, and Bill, the guitar player that you see in my videos, was there too. And his house, I think his house got a little damage, but his neighborhood really got hit pretty hard. So anyway, I stayed home that evening and edited that video. That's why the video got out in time, or got out on Friday. Then Saturday morning, I got up and I went out to the field barn out there in the middle of the field, and there's a barn that, it didn't lose any tin, but a lot of the tin was loose. So I nailed all that back down Saturday morning. Then, as soon as I got done doing that, I did this. Well, my friends, I had a lot of projects over the weekend, but the project that I'm going to show you right now was both a win and a fail. Now, how do you have a win and a fail on a project? Well, I accomplished my goal. I just didn't do it as well as I thought I was going to do it. See this big old oak walnut tree here? One of the old timers called this a butternut walnut. There's another name for it. It's some sort of a hybrid walnut. I can't remember now, but the walnuts are more pointed. Anyway, this limb, this gigantic limb, it was almost as big as that part of the tree. In fact, it probably was as big as this part of the tree. It came out and it grew right over the top of my shed. It's been bugging me for years, and when we had those giant windstorms,
I was expecting this to split off and fall down. Fortunately, it didn't. But that next morning after the storm, I decided I'm going to go ahead and take this limb down. I undercut it, thinking that, it's going to fall down and split. And sure enough, even though I undercut it, when I sawed it off, it split the tree all the way down to here. We've painted it with this cure, forget what you call that now. But anyway, we painted it with this stuff. And hopefully it'll save the tree. But doggone it didn't go like I was expecting, I didn't undercut it enough. I was afraid, if you undercut them very far, it's going to pinch your saw because the limb's going to come down and it's going to pinch your saw, and then your saw is locked in there. Well, I was trying to avoid that, but I still wanted it undercut, Unfortunately, it did what it did. It messed up the tree pretty bad. But I got the limb off of the building. It was laying on top of the building, and that's never good. So I accomplished my goal, just didn't do it the way I wanted to do it. Also, when it came down, it still took this eave rafter, or whatever you want to call it. It took that off, but that was barely hanging by a thread anyway. So that didn't surprise me. I'll probably have to, put a new end on that and put that back up there, but that end was pretty bad already anyway, so whatever. Just is what it is, You win some, you lose some.
Yeah, I win one and lose two, and win one and lose two. That's pretty much the way it works with me. I went metal detecting Saturday afternoon after I got those kinds of chores done, and found tons of stuff, but nothing worth showing you. Did nails and wire and bullets, always bullets, just tons of bullets, but I didn't really find anything that I think was Civil War related, so I didn't bother showing you anything of that. Well, then yesterday morning, I been wanting to dig around and see if I could find that cave, and here's the results of that.
Well, you can see I've got set up here to dig out this old spring. I say old spring, it's a spring, and you can see that the water is coming out of the hole there, flowing down into the creek. Now that's a small spring, but when it rains hard, that thing is gushing. And according to the LiDAR data, there is a hole right here, a great big cavity. So I'm just going to see if I can dig this out with my little mini excavator, which is totally debatable. I doubt it'll do it, but you never know. So I'm going to give it a try. I thought it'd be fun to try using this. If that don't work, and I think there's some potential here, I'll go get the big skid steer with the bucket, and we'll get it opened up one way or the other. But I thought it would be fun to try with this. Well, I gave up and loaded the digger back up on the trailer. Pull it with my little Ranger here. The problem I ran into, it wasn't that it wouldn't dig. I mean, it did actually dig very well. It's just not safe because the seat belt has quit working in this thing. This, cheap piece of junk seat belt, and I mean, it is a cheap piece of junk. It won't clip onto this end here, and this is cheap junk too. It doesn't adjust properly and it slips. So I'm gonna go get myself some good seat belt to put on this thing, because that is total crap, and I'm seriously telling you, it's junk. And I really got hurt on there. It banged my head into that glass there. And after that, I said, man, I'm not operating this thing till I get a good seat belt. There's water coming out pretty much all the way from here, all the way over to there in different places. I have a feeling that we're going to have to open up this whole area, probably take that cedar tree out, which that's no great loss. In fact, I could probably use it for shingles or something. So anyway, we got a lot of work to do here yet. I may bring the big bobcat with the big backhoe and get serious about it, because I do think there's potential here for a cave. I really do. I wouldn't spend my time on it if I didn't. The more I get into it, the more I think there's going to be a cave here, especially the fact that there's so much water coming out. We'll see.
Oh, I cut that off. I can't start it right where I cut it off. That was by accident. There was a continuation there. The video went on and just showed that about 5 or 6 hours later, and most of the water that was coming out had already dried up. There was no more water coming out. And it also showed a little snake that I cut the tail off of when I was digging that. I didn't realize it at the time. And the snake was still alive, but he wasn't feeling too good, I don't think. So I covered him up with some bunch of leaves, and he wasn't a poisonous snake. He was some sort of a water snake. But anyway, I hate it when I injure an animal like that, because it's not something that you need to do, you know. And I know some people just would kill any snake they see, but you know what? They don't hurt nothing. I know you think they do. It's just like spiders. 99.9% of the spiders don't hurt nothing either, but everybody hates them as just, and don't get me wrong, I'm going to kill them if they're in my house, but otherwise I don't mind. I don't bother them. There's not much point in it. But anyway, it's just one of those kind of deals. I hated that it happened. After that, and since the seat belt had broken, well, then I brought it back to the shop and I rigged up a new seat belt. And well, it's not new. I took it off of the John Deere tractor. And the truth is, nobody ever uses the seat belt on the John Deere tractor. You know, some of you will frown at that and say that that's a bad thing. But in my whole life of operating tractors, I've never, ever once worn a seat belt operating a tractor. You know, I grew up operating them from the time I was 10 years old till now, and never worn a seatbelt on a tractor. I know some people think you should, but not so much. And so that seatbelt's been hanging there, and it was just full of grease and everything anyway on that John Deere. So I took it off of there, put it on the mini on the mini excavator, and then I went back out and did this.
Well, it's crazy windy out here, so expect wind noise, sorry. But I'm out in the middle of this back field. Over here was the house with the rock wall. You know, I don't know, we call it that just because there was a rock wall against that hillside over there in the woods. There was a spring here, and it's piped underground over to here. And I can show you the pipe here. I think you can possibly see it right there. Just the end of the pipe. There's no water running out of that. When I had this dipped out, there was water coming out of the direct center here. So this for sure is a spring, and it's piped out to the creek, all the way down to the creek. So my idea was, well, partially to metal detect this better by getting all this junk out of here. But I want to do something better out here in this field, because this was like a hole. These rocks were piled in on top of it and all of that, but it was not, you couldn't drive over this. So I either want to make it where you can for sure see it, like pile stone up around it or something where you could really see it, or, you know, somehow encase the water and seal it over where you could drive over the top of it. I don't know. One way or the other, it just isn't good the way it is. Definitely can improve it. The water's going to clear up here if we give it a little while, but I'm just trying to see where the water's actually flowing. For sure the water is going through that pipe. I can see there's a stream going that way. But I really am not 100% sure where the water's coming out. I saw it bubble. Well, there you can see the bubbling right there. But a while ago, I saw it right here. Can you see that bubbling? So I know there's water coming in. Earlier, it was a big, well, there it is right there. There it is. So obviously, it's coming in from straight underground, coming up, like an artesian well type deal. So for sure water's going through, and you can even see that it is going through. But this one over here seems to be a completely dry hole now. You know, back 100 years ago, 150 years ago, the water table was probably higher, and the water was probably coming up in here, and they piped it over to that one. I'm not so sure we need this one anymore. I might just fill this in. I don't know. Might give it a few months and wait for some good rains and stuff and see if it changes, you know. Because I don't want to close off the spring if it's a wet weather spring that really runs, you know. I'd rather have it piped over here. But for sure now I do see the two places. Well, for sure there's one over there and one right here, and maybe more. And it looks like a fairly good sized spring coming out there. I'll walk over to the creek and show you what's coming out. Of course, it's going to be dirty right now since I've been digging in this. So there it is. You can see where the excavator is out there. It's closer to the dry hole. But here is what's coming out. So you can see that's running pretty good. That's enough to make a field real messy. If you left that water just stay out there in the field, you know, it would just make a swamp out there. So this will clear up in a little while, and it'll keep running and go right down the creek. Just down there a little ways is where I was trying to find that next cave. I feel fairly sure there's one there. Well, I switched sides here on this hole, and now I can see three places. It's coming out right there, coming out right there, and coming out right there. So there's three places. I don't see any others. But basically this whole area right here, this big circle, is a spring. There does not seem to be any flow coming from the upper spring. So my guess is we could probably fill the upper one in, but I will wait until we have some really wet weather. It's bright and early Monday morning, and you can see all these little tiny holes. Every one of those little round circles is where water is coming up. Right here, that one, and maybe that one are the best examples of sand boiling up. Can you see the sand boiling there? If I leave it on there long enough, you can actually see the sand boiling. So there's a steady stream of water coming out of there. I don't see any gold coins in the bottom of it or anything, unfortunately, which I was expecting that actually, but unfortunately disappointed again. But there's a lot of holes. I'm surprised how many holes there are here. I don't know if there's any holes back under the edges more, like maybe there's a place where the water's still, maybe we still have to dig it out wider to find the full spring. But I don't see water flowing in from the edges anywhere, at least any sign of it. It could be doing that without you noticing it really though. But it looks like the heaviest concentration is just a circle right here. Just a big circle right there. It's pretty cool. So back in, the 1850s, where we have deeds back on this farm, you're looking at gold right here. This is just as good as gold to have clear, fresh water coming out of the ground. Now back then, the best thing to have done would have been to dig this hole even a little deeper maybe and rock line it and let it clear up like this, and then you could just take a bucket and dip it out and you'd have as good a water as you're going to get in this general area back in those days. And here's a look at the water that it's clear now. And just a side note, when I was a kid, just infant up to probably a teenager, I remember my great uncle. This is how he got his water for his house. He had 2 daughters and, of course, his wife. And they all lived in a house, and they would walk down the driveway, actually, and there was a pipe in the ground that had water coming out of it. Now, it was a small pipe. It was only a small, just a little iron pipe. But it had water coming out steadily. It was pushed back into the hill where the spring was. And they would take a bucket down there, and that's how they got their water. Until I was probably a teenager, and then they finally had a well drilled and got water run into their house.
Yeah, that's the way people used to live. And just so you understand too, you remember the song I wrote about the wedding band. Well, that's the spring, the one that with the little holes coming up. That's the spring where I found the wedding band. It was down in there about that deep. It was about 18 inches from the grass surface deep. So anyway, that's the name of that tune. And then finally, here's what I did this morning.
Well, here's the fruit of my labor this morning. There's 8 2x5, 6s, 7. Some of them are more than, I don't think any of them are more than 7, but real close to 7. And I got those out of those little tiny logs. It's amazing. I cut up 3 of those tiny logs and got that much 2x material. Now, sure, this top one's got some live edge on it, but most of them don't have much live edge at all. Most of them are pretty good. It's amazing how you can finagle that log around and really get wood out of it. That'll have to be stacked on this pile and stickered. I'll do that after lunch. And for the record, here's the 1x material that is mostly live edge, and all of that can be made into 3/4 inch boards. Some of them will be cut off really short. Like for instance, here's an example. Like this one here, I'll have to cut it off about here and then make a 1x4 or something out of it that's 4 feet long. The rest of that'll be scrap, but there's a lot of good lumber in there if you just take your time and saw it out. It only takes a few minutes on my table saw to do that.
Yeah, just stay busy pretty much all the time. And so for this afternoon then, my daughter, Lisa, the oldest daughter, is here. And I think Sue and her are riding horses and things today. And I have one more of those laser cutters that I was demoing, and I'm going to try to get that fixed up so she can take that home with her today. So that's one of the things I'll be doing this afternoon. Another thing I'll be doing this afternoon is trying to figure out what happened to the internet again and trying to figure out what happened to the wired connection. I'm pretty sure that one of the routers has just shot craps and it's gone. It ain't working no more. And those were expensive routers. It just my luck that they got hit by lightning and messed them up, Just aggravating. I mean, they really cost a lot of money. It's, I would say, $300 or $400 a piece, and I had 3 of them. Yeah, about $400 a piece, I think. Anyway, let's see who's here today and what they've got to say. David Tharp looks like he was number 1, got the question marks. If you're new here, if you put question marks in front of your comment, I'll read your comment. Otherwise, I typically skip over them because it's just too hard to read everything. David Tharp, I noticed that the cover of the ironing board was wrinkled. Then I laughed at the irony of it. Then I laughed at, again, irony. Okay, okie dokie. Eddie Turner, Itchy Boots portable parts store. Yeah, what are the odds she'd have the extra shift lever? Yeah. Well, I think she's learned that she breaks those the little hand lever, and she breaks the foot levers quite often, so she's bringing extras of those. Rod Wintler, Jerry, I read about Rolla wind damage in the news. Are you okay? Yes, we really did fine. I rarely miss a jam if there's a jam, but I thought, boy, the way the wind's blowing out there now and the way they keep saying there's going to be tornadoes left and right, I think I'm just going to stay right here down in this deep valley. Quite honestly, these deep valleys are, I don't know, I shouldn't say they're protection from a storm like that, but they do block a lot of the wind when you're in a side valley like our house is. Our house is in the side valley here. And, you know how it is. I mean, if the tornado came right down here, it's going to nail you. But for the most part, it kind of blocks a lot of the wind. So, you can run, but you can't hide from Mother Nature. It doesn't really matter what you do. But I would have rather taken my chances right here. And I think it turned out to be a good decision. Eddie Turner, yeah, we were concerned about you. It's terrible what the storm caused. Boy, it did. It caused some major damage. It really did do a number on Rolla. I haven't been in town yet to look at it. I didn't want to go in there gawking. I thought about going in there and taking some video so you could see it this morning. But I thought, no, I'm sure they're, dealing with enough, and I don't need to be running through the middle of town there in the middle of the whole mess. I actually, considered, and I may still do it, it's still a possibility, taking some equipment in there if they need it, but I thought I'd wait a day or two and see what's going on and who still needs help, and maybe I'll offer some help if I see a particular need. Gino Hitch, good afternoon, Jerry and friends. Hope everyone had a good weekend. Did the tornadoes miss you? I was praying they did. Yes, they sure did. We did well. Dottie's praying for everybody. Thank you, Dottie. I'm sure that helped. Let's see. Moving on down. Donald Matthews, Itchy Boots, Grasshoppers. Boy, wasn't that something? I mean, you're riding through the Holy Land. You should expect to be hit with biblical plagues. Man, there was everything. It looked, again, I'm colorblind, but to me it looked like everything was yellow around there because those were some kind of yellow looking grasshopper. Yeah, it was something. See, moving on down, David Tharp, we had 2 separate F3 tornadoes hit here in Poplar Bluff. One fatally. It was bad. Wow. I hadn't heard about Poplar Bluff, but man, yeah, it hit a lot of places. It wasn't just Missouri for sure. I mean, there's a lot of other states, especially down Louisiana and Mississippi, places like that. I heard really got nailed. It's terrible. Ronald Todd, good afternoon, everyone from the West Bank of New Jersey, and everyone have a happy. I keep wanting to say Thanksgiving, St. Patrick's Day. I'm so messed up. I don't know which ends up. It rattles me when everything goes wrong just before we go live. And it seems like that's the only time it goes wrong. It's just before we go live. Wavy Gravy. Tragedy struck last week. I rubbed spot remover on my dog and he completely disappeared. Let me guess. His name was Spot? Let's see. Sidecar Bob. Hi, y'all. We still have snow on the ground, but not really as much as a week ago. The end is in sight. Wow. Yeah, we've really been having pretty good weather. Now, last night it got down in the 20s again. It's just nuts how the weather goes up and down. But I'd rather actually see that than it just go straight hot and stay hot, because that happens too sometimes. David Tharp says, I really hit the bottle yesterday. Finally got the ketchup to come out. Yeah, if you tap on it just right. I don't know if it's really true, but this is years ago, people were always saying, if you take that ketchup bottle, and you've got the ketchup coming down here, and you tap on it right where that label was, where it said Heinz, or it used to be embossed in there. If you tap on it with a knife or something, it just comes out. And it seemed to work. So you might want to try that sometime, by the way. I know that was just a joke, but on the other hand, that's really helpful information if it works for you. Wavy Gravy, my goofy neighbor and his wife took a taxi cab to the drive-in theater. The movie cost him $300. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. Let's see. Sidecar Bob, we had a bit of rain and the ground is still frozen, so there are reports of flooding all around this area. Our sump pump is cycling on and off all the time because of the basement. Yeah, but the basement is dry, he says. Yeah, it's good to have a sump pump if you've got those kinds of issues. That's for darn sure. And you hope the electric don't go out. Ben Boyd, speaking of guitar frets, Gibson highlights their plucking machine. Is that mostly hype and unnecessary for the average guitar player? Well, the truth is, I've heard about that a number of times, and I've even briefly saw some video about it, but I didn't pay much attention to it. I mean, it's out of reach. It's a very, very expensive machine, and it just had no application to me, so I didn't care about it, to be honest with you. And that's just the truth of it. Do I think it could do better than I could do on a fret job? I doubt it. I really seriously doubt it. It might be faster, maybe. Might be slightly more accurate. Don't see how it could be, hardly. I mean, I'm not trying to say that everything I did was gold and perfect, but the techniques, if you do the techniques properly by hand, it'd be pretty much impossible to do it much better because it's as good as you can do. I don't know if that makes sense or not. John Berger, I saw you can buy cookie slabs for cheap that grain would look awesome on top. Why is this a bad idea? Because it's not slab. So you can buy cookie slabs for cheap. That grain would look awesome on top. Why is that a bad idea? Because it's not slab. Okay, that one went over. Let's see. Preston Johnson. Jerry, so glad you were spared from the storm. Tell Dottie she's convinced that me that her way works. I keep Rosa Group and everyone in my prayers. Well, I want you all to know that I pray for you all too. I do it as a group. I pray for my friends, and I include everybody that's here on these vlogs as my friends. So now, a moment ago, we were up to 180 some viewers. Now we're down to 144. Dottie Hillebrand, just rain, no wind in South Carolina. We did get enough rain to wash the pollen away. We didn't get enough rain to wash the pollen away. We had a pretty good amount of rain. I could tell it washed the driveway in places, but that all came after dark while the wind was blowing and howling out there. Bill Mumbo, pluck machines do work, but expensive. My instruments all play beautifully just with a setup, and thanks to Jerry, I can spot level and set them up perfectly. Yeah, well, I have to agree with Bill, because honestly, I mean, I'm not saying that you can't improve on the methods that I use and stuff, but dang, it'd be pretty hard to make them better. I mean, I'm not doing this. It's just a fact. I mean, when you take a level file and you level all your frets with it, guess what? They're level. It works that way. You can't help it. It's just going to be that way. It's just one of those, it's just a black and white fact. Let's see here. Doggone it. It scrolled on me. Joe's guilty guitar. Wow, you got the start of a Beth pool. I saw that comment earlier. It doesn't have any question marks on it. Do you mean bath pool? Or is there such thing as a bath pool that I'm not familiar with? David Tharp, in the last 11 years, 115 people died in weightlifting accidents. During that same 11-year period, only one person died eating a donut. Make good choices. Yeah, I agree. Make good choices. Except that I'm still not eating pretty much anything. I mean, I'm eating 2 eggs, 2 pieces of bacon, or 2 pieces of sausage in the morning. Eating just a little thing of nuts for lunch. Eating an even smaller thing of nuts for supper. And a half a bag of popcorn in the evenings. And I still weigh 206. I've been at 206 for about 8 days now, maybe, something like that. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. As much as I work, too. I mean, like if I was just sitting on the couch doing nothing, well, then maybe. But that's not the case. Okay. Bill Mumbo. Also, I used to frequent a famous British dealer and played many G-sharps, F-sharps, guitars that were worse than basic instruments. It's shameful. Okay, I'm not sure what that G and the sharps thing means. But it wouldn't be hard. It's not hard to believe that you can play something that are way worse. That part's easy to believe. David Tharp, do we see another water wheel coming in the future? No. Not even close. I bit off, I knew what I bit off when I started that project. I've said it since the day I started that project, that this was a huge project. It wasn't no little bitty thing. It's huge. Of course, I had a big vision of it. I knew what I wanted, and I knew it was going to take a lot of time, and I still got a lot of work to do, and I'm going to get back on it here in a few days, or a day or two. Probably by the end of the week, I'll be back on that, I would imagine. David Tharp, no, I read that one. Bill Mumbo, boiled sand, delicious. Yeah, that sand was just boiling up out there. Yeah, if you look down in there, you can see it. It's just, that little sand just keeps, you can tell the water's coming out. It's pretty amazing. And, what I try to picture, and maybe you could think of this too, you know how remote that is. Think about how remote that was back in about 1864 during the Civil War. Think about how remote that was then. I mean, you are in the middle of nowhere, buddy. I mean, you're still in the middle of nowhere now. But 160 years ago, think of how in the middle of nowhere you really, really were back then. And that right around that spring and all up right in that whole general area there is where I'm finding all those Civil War bullets and the buttons and the spur and I don't know, all that stuff, and then I found that little Civil War art piece and then the bullet that had been flattened out, probably made a checker piece out of it or something. So think about it. They were drinking out of that spring probably back then. Because all the stuff was right around that spring. I mean, I say right around it. I mean, within 100 yards, either direction. And, just so a lot of it's just all around there. Let's see. Anyway, moving on down. Dottie's got some question marks. The snake wasn't poisoned, but I would hurt myself to get away. Yeah, I understand that. It's just I don't know. I just don't get me wrong. If I had a copperhead snake right out my back door, the sucker's dead. He's dead. No doubt about it. But if I see the same copperhead out in the woods, I'm going to let him go. It's not going to bother anything. But right around the door, where he can bite you, that's a different thing. So I'm the same way with like spiders and stuff. First of all, I'm not afraid of spiders at all. I know some people are just deathly afraid of them. But, I mean, if I see one in the house, I just, take my finger and just popping. He ain't going to do nothing. There's nothing they can do. Sidecar Bob, I had an aunt and uncle that retired in the 60s to an old farmhouse, and it had built over a well, so the pump came out through the kitchen counter next to the sink. Lap of luxury. Yeah, and there was the old place where I used to hunt, where you've heard me tell the story where I spent the night when it was like 15 below. That old house, it had a pump right next to the sink also, but it didn't go to a well, it went to a cistern, and they caught the water off the house in the cistern, and then they pumped it out with a hand pump well right there on the sink. Cisterns, yeah, not too cool cisterns. I mean, if you can keep them sealed really tight, they're not too bad, but you got to remember, anything that's on that roof and in that gutter's coming right down. Of course, it's kind of that way with a spring, too. It's not like today. We think of today as being, really clean, but even today, I'm sure there's things you would hate to see in your water that are there. Bill Mumbo, Jerry, your blood worth bottling. Your heart... Your hero to us old fellas. Itchy Boots is a fearless gal, fantastic gal, as you say. Almost as fab as your Sue. Yeah, Sue could keep up with Itchy Boots, no problem. Especially if she was the same age as Itchy Boots. No question. In fact, she'd be circles around Itchy Boots. But now she could still keep up with her, I think, even now. But back then, oh my gosh. Talk about a tornado. She was a tornado. GNP Old Marine Shop. Hi, Jerry. If you did lose your house, God forbid, would you rebuild a new house as large as and hard to heat? Oh, no. No, honestly, people have said so many things about this house and how to do this or do that. And the truth is, it's not worth doing those things, like, insulating the floors or putting in floor heating and all that. It's just not worth it. It would be way harder to do that than it would just be to tear it down and build a new one. I'd just soon tear it down and build a new one. So if it did get demolished, well, first of all, if my rental retreat was still available, if it didn't get demolished, I'd be moved up there. But otherwise, I just build another one. Because I built that rental retreat also. I built it from scratch. So I just built another one, probably right here in this same valley, because this valley's protected pretty much. That's why they built it, where they built it. That's why the Native Americans live where they live, because they were in a side valley in between hills, and the main wind that comes down the main valley didn't hit them, And the Native Americans, they weren't dummies. Bill Mumbo, hey Jerry, celebrate Patty's Day, eat something green. I dare you. Well, I can eat something green, like a green M&M. That's no problem. I can eat those. Let's see. Doggone it, it scrolled on me again. I lost my place again. I didn't think it went that far. Okay, here we go. Spoken song. Hey, Jerry, just wanted to wish you happy and safe 4th of July. Well, the way I'm going right now, I'd believe it. I'm so confused. I don't know which ends up. Kim Williford. Hey, hi, Jerry. I sent you an email about Sterling acoustic guitar that needs cleaned up and fixed up to play. I just wanted your opinion if it was worth fixing up or not. Well, Kim, I'll try to remember to look at that. I am way behind on email. I haven't looked at email, and I'm ashamed to say it's forever. I mean, like forever. I haven't looked in at least a month. I haven't looked at any email, maybe 2 months. I just haven't. I've been so dang busy, and and when I sit down, I just don't feel like trying to read email. So I'll look at it. I'll look for that. Simon Jardine, I wanted my new solid mahogany guitar to open out tone-wise with age and use, but the thick poly finish won't allow that. I've decided it's a removal job for an expert luthier. Yeah, I've got an old Gibson. It's a 1968-ish model, around that time. That's about when I bought it, I think. I was just a kid. First guitar I ever bought with my own money. And it was a Gibson Jubilee acoustic guitar. And the finish on it's real thick and heavy, and it's never had a good sound. Of course, I didn't know, anything about them when I bought that one. It was really pretty guitar, very pretty rosewood and all that, but it's never had a decent sound. And I would say a lot of it was the finish. Could also be that they just, I don't know. They may have not built it to the standards that I would build to today either, but I would say most of it was the finish. It's just too heavy and too thick. Bill Rhodes, good afternoon, everyone. I finally made it. Well, glad you're here. Wavy Gravy, my thanks to Stephen Wright for my jokes today. Okay, cool. John Berger, cookie slabs are like if you sawed. Oh, okay, I got you. I know what you're talking about now. You have a guitar top size piece of, yeah. I understand why you don't want left, right grain, but why is circular grain bad? Well, as far as trying to make a guitar out of a cookie slab, I know what you're talking about now. I just had a different vision in mind when you were talking before. But anyway, anytime you can't use ingrained. Basically, that's what you're doing. You're thinking of it as a round slab, but that's ingrain. So your ingrain is not stable, for one thing. It would never hold up. It would be a problem, and it would be exceptionally hard on top of that. There's like, I can't think of a single redeeming quality why you would want to use ingrain on an instrument for sure. Now, having said that, if you wanted to make a coffee table or something with ingrain, I mean, it would look nice, but it's probably over time would crack and split and break, But no, ingrain is not very good to use for anything, really. At least nothing I can think of at the moment, but I'm sure there's always some use for it somewhere. Mike Spivey, good flow of water in the springs. Yeah, and that one's really one of the smaller springs, believe it or not. But being out in the middle of that field where those soldiers were camping, it was gold right there. I mean, that literally was gold back then. You can't even exaggerate it. It was gold. I mean, you didn't have access to water like you do now. That was gold. John Berger, if you were to put a stand-up stump on a sawmill and cut the slab, you just have wood with circular grain. Why is that bad for guitar tops? Again, it's the in grain. Yeah, it's just the in grain. It's not good at all for anything. It's just not good. It won't dry properly. It will always want to crack and break. It's just not good. Eddie D. Hi, Jerry. And if you want to ask me how I know, I've made all kinds of slabs like that over years of my life, and none of them ever hold up very long. I mean, they're good for a little while, but they'll break eventually. They will dry and crack and break. Eddie D. Hi, Jerry and all. Do you think caffeine would help you to lose weight? Well, I don't know. I drink my caffeine every evening when I have my popcorn with my Pepsi. That, honestly, I know some of you will probably think, oh, it's just in your head or it's just something. If I don't have caffeine, I can barely ever sleep. I mean, I'm not kidding you. I just don't sleep. caffeine is the only thing that makes me sleep. And if I don't have it, I just don't sleep. I'll stay up all night, I'm saying, the realistic part of it is I'll sleep an hour or two, maybe 2 hours in a row. Then I'll wake up for 4 or 5 hours. Then I might sleep another hour. That's the way I sleep if I don't have caffeine. It ain't pretty. Wavy gravy. I would much rather die from lifting donuts than from lifting weights. A friend of mine died after lifting weights for 4 hours straight. He choked to death on a chocolate eclair. Let's see. Kim Williford. I pray for everyone here, and you too, Jerry. Well, thank you, Kim. I do the same. Let's see. Moving on down. Bill Mumbo. John Berger. Cookie slabs aren't stable. Jerry will explain why you need quarter sawn material for... Yeah, quarter sawn is... You can use slab sawn also, which is not quarter sawn, and slab sawn's fine. It's not my preference. It wasn't the preference of Stradivari, which is where I learned to understand the properties the most. Was reading about him and his choices in wood and stuff. So my preference is always quarter sawn wood, whether it's top, back, sides, doesn't matter what it is, quarter sawn. But slab sawn is fine, and lots of people will argue slab sawn has a better sound on the backs and sides, not on the top. No, I don't think anybody argues that slab sawn is the way to go with the top. But on the backs and sides, slab sawn it's okay. I'm okay with it, but I much prefer quarter sawn, period. Quarter sawn is very stable. It's very strong for how thin you make it. It's very strong for how thin you can make it. Let's see. Bill Mumbo. Good grief, Jerry. My Gibson is also a 68. It sounds really good. Yeah, well, mine doesn't. It's not horrible. It just doesn't sound as good as it should, especially for the age. Kim Williford, happy St. Patrick's Day. Done nice. Jerry, I like your red shirt. It looks amazing. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Now, most of you know the story on this. John... that used to record here, he gave me a bunch of these shirts one year for Christmas. I gave most of them out to my grandkids and things, but the larger ones I just kept for myself. But anyway, I've got quite a few of them, so I just wear them every once in a while. Zappa, if have any caffeine after 12 noon, I will not sleep at all that night. Yeah. See, that's one of those things that just is backwards for me. And I'm not kidding you. I was on a caffeine-free diet for a whole year when I had the Meniere's disease in my left ear. And, they were really strict about this. And you do not want to drink caffeine with Meniere's. They were just all over me about it. Well, for that whole year, I'm not kidding you. I didn't sleep at all. I'm not lying about it either. It was the most miserable year. I never slept more than 2 hours in a row that whole year. And once I finally figured out that the medicines they had me on were about to kill me, and seriously telling you, they were killing me. I couldn't even walk up a hill. There's not a hill around here. I don't care how steep it is that I can't walk right up. I couldn't walk up the simplest hill. It was about to kill me. I could tell that it was all I could do, and I thought, it's got to be that medicine. So I quit taking the medicine. The very next day, my hearing cleared up. I could hear. And so that night then, I drank a Pepsi and slept 8 hours straight. Didn't wake up once. So I said, forget that stuff. And the Meniere's, and fortunately for me, so I'm not saying their treatment didn't help, because fortunately for me, I've lost very little hearing compared to the average person with Meniere's disease. Meniere's disease is really destructive to your hearing. And fortunately for me, I barely lost anything. I've lost a little bit of my highs, the high notes, but that's it, only in my left ear. That was one miserable year, let me tell you, because everything in that ear sounded like an electrical shock. Like you'd pluck a string on a guitar and it would go, It did not sound like a note. It went just like that, exactly like that. It was horrible. It was horrible. I almost gave up music entirely. And I really was seriously thinking about giving it up. So what I had to do whenever I was playing with the band, I'd have to put this ear to the left side of the stage. So I'd be on the far left and have the band on my right where I could hear out of my right ear. And that helped. It still wasn't great, but it helped. But anyway, that's behind me now, and I'm very thankful that it turned out the way it did. But ever since then, too, that's what's caused my vertigo. So I got to be very careful about getting, like, if I get down and look under something and turn my head sideways while I'm down, oh, man, I'll hit the ground. It's not good. Not pretty. I have to be very careful how I move my head these days. Let's see. I'm going to get done here real quick. A cookie slab might make a good dartboard. Yeah, it probably would. Depending especially on the kind of wood. If you had a softwood, for sure. I can't pronounce your name there. Andre Podlucky? Whole year without coffee. I tried because of my reflux, and I was done without coffee. Yeah, I've never drank coffee, and that's because of the taste. Again, I'm a taster, so anything that tastes, I can't see how you drink it. I just don't see how you can drink that stuff. But I like Pepsi, and it's got caffeine, and it makes me sleep, so I drink it. Simon Jardine, why not strip your 68 and let us all see and hear it? I'd love to hear the difference. Well, that's a thought, I guess. I'm just trying to keep it original, I guess, because it's a fairly collectible, fairly valuable guitar, actually. I mean, it's worth way more than I paid for it. I only paid maybe $300 for it or something like that, $200. I can't remember when I bought it. But now it's worth maybe a couple thousand, because it's up in pretty good shape. Bill Mumbo, nice green shirt for St. Patrick's Day. Well, thank you. One of you thinks it's red, one of you thinks it's green. You guys are colorblind. Y'all take care. We're going to have a good day, and we will see you tomorrow with something else. Thanks for being here.